on, Cowboys fans, Cowboy Nation? This is not a game breakdown. This is not a stat check. This is not talking about how well the Dallas Cowboys did during the regular season. This is not about what players showed up, what players stepped up and improved this season. This is about the Dallas Cowboys not getting the job done once again. Postseason comes around, regular season talk. We get high on the team. We get high on expectations as the season goes. Even the most pessimistic of Dallas Cowboys fans, as the season always goes on and we find more and more success during the regular season, this team, it just pulls you in. You can't help it. It's especially at this point, we're talking about being Cowboys fans. I've been a Cowboys fan for my entire life, and we're talking about I have not seen a championship, a caliber team, a level team. I have to be maybe 2-3 years old the last time the Dallas Cowboys. We're talking about winning championships. So we're now at the point where if you're a Cowboys fan, I cannot blame you if you don't have any faith in this team, if you will not put any more faith in this team. I cannot blame you if you would not have any faith in this front office, in the coaching, talking about from general managers to the owner, everything involved. I cannot blame you. I cannot blame you if you're upset with the quarterback, if you're upset with the receivers, if you're upset with the offensive line, the defensive line, the linebackers, the secondary. Everyone on this team has a part to play and a part to blame, to take some blame for what happened to the Dallas Cowboys in this past game against the Green Bay Packers. It was a game where we're talking about the Green Bay Packers were pretty much gifted opportunity over and over and over. And if you go back to my game breakdown, the key matchups, get players to keep an eye out on, or just some of the things that could hang the Dallas Cowboys up if they were not, just going to say, pretty much staying disciplined. It was going to be not coming in there focused and not, I want to say as simple as plain, not hurting yourselves. The Dallas Cowboys, if you ever see any major issue, one of the biggest things is always the Dallas Cowboys find themselves so many times just stepping on their own feet. This game turned into, I don't want to say it was even a shootout, because if you're looking at a certain situation, the Green Bay Packers, the halftime score for the Dallas Cowboys and Green Bay Packers in this postseason game was Green Bay 27, the Dallas Cowboys 7. That is unexplainable, it's unacceptable, and at this point, you're looking at asking yourself, what exactly is this team missing? Is it the culture? Is it from the very top? And at this point, I feel like we now have gone over so many years. Jerry Jones, the Jones family in general. Jerry Jones is a great owner in terms of bringing in money, bringing in eyes, having people talking about the Dallas Cowboys. But we're looking for actual postseason success. We're tired of the excuses. We're tired of not getting it done. We're tired of watching these players always come up small, just cannot ever get over the hump. And I'm going to say, as a Cowboys fan, it's draining. It's draining to constantly put your faith in this team and for them to constantly just not make things happen. We're talking about this game, obviously. The Green Bay Packers were very young. I believe a statistic popped up on the TV screen in this past postseason game, Cowboys versus Packers, that the Green Bay Packers are the youngest team to make the postseason by, I guess you want to say average age, since 1977. Let that sink in. We're talking about since 1977. This is the youngest team to make the playoffs by average age. And I said myself, this is a team the Dallas Cowboys should take advantage of and be able to handle. But the biggest issue, I said once again, was sometimes when you're playing these teams that are playing with house money. Let's be very clear. The Dallas Cowboys, you're talking about a team that I think has won the last 16 games at home. A team that's put up, I believe, 37 points per game at home. And you're looking at a team, obviously, once again, as undefeated this year at home. And if the Cowboys somehow found themselves in the perfect position to take advantage of a team, we're talking about with a young quarterback, now in year 3, first-year starter, Jordan Love, who did throw 32 touchdown passes to only 11 interceptions, and I said coming into this game, he has the capability and the potential to make these throws, so you're going to have to continue to get pressure, which we completely did not do. You're going to have to stay locked in and focused in the secondary, which was completely what we did not do. You saw guys like Romeo Dubs completely just wide open the entire time. Dontavian Wicks, I believe. We're talking about a rookie receiver out of Virginia, a guy I talked about a little bit. And I said he has some talent. I watched him play a little bit in college. And this is a guy who finds himself in the end zone on Stephon Gilmore. This game was just ugly from the beginning. There's not any way to talk about it. I don't want to even break it down. At this point, like I said, we have nothing to look forward to for the rest of this regular season. I mean, for the rest of this football season, I'm going to say, because obviously the Dallas Cowboys came into that game knowing you're one and done. You had everything out in front of you. You had the opportunity to show that you are a serious team. And once again, the Dallas Cowboys, with a 12-5 record for the third straight year, did not get it done in the postseason. This is going to be it's going to be hard to get through this entire offseason because there are going to be so many questions. Who's to blame? Who should take the most blame? Are you looking at Dak Prescott again, now going to be heading into year 9 next season? Is he going to be the franchise quarterback? And to me, it has nothing to do with Dak Prescott himself. It has to do with what is the vision of this front office. Obviously, you do know Jerry Jones is going to get final say. He's going to get final word on what the Cowboys are going to do. Stephen Jones is going to have his voice in the mix as well. So there are going to be lots of questions to be asked. The Dallas Cowboys have got to figure out how they're viewing Dak Prescott, what exactly they want to do with him going forward, what exactly is going to happen with this offensive play calling, because as we do know, I feel like this game was the most obvious coming into it. There were going to be some people on the chopping block, and that's going to start with their coaching staffs if the Dallas Cowboys did not come out here and take care of business. And this wasn't even a game where you're looking to potentially just blame only the defense, because somehow it turns into a shootout, but the Dallas Cowboys are also staying in the mix. It was not like that at all. This is a game of playing catch up the entire time. And at this point, it's I don't want to say it's anything that makes you quit on the team of being a fan, but at some point, you have got to continue to ask yourself, what exactly can we as a fan base do differently? Is it stop supporting just the trash that you're watching on the field in the big time games? Is it just not showing up if you're feeling like the front office is not taking that seriously? I spoke about many things going into this game that I felt were going to be an issue, and I've talked about it a little bit over the weeks. Linebacker play was going to be the biggest issue, and I was kind of irritated. I wasn't going to say it. I felt it could be detrimental because I thought we could maybe find ourselves certain ways around some of these matchups, knowing that you're having a guy like Marquise Bell, knowing you're having a guy like Jaron Kearse. We're talking about some more of the hybrid linebacker type position. We play them a lot in the boxes, and at some point, I felt we could potentially maybe work our way around it, but I also was still, it's kind of one of those things that's just kind of poking you in the side a little bit, was that our linebacker play has been lacking. And to me, that plays a major role in how detrimental the run defense has been to this team. The run defense, to me, we can talk about the interior, we can talk about Jonathan Hankins and Mozzie Smith and what Mozzie Smith did not become in year 1 and what we had hoped he probably could be, and Oso Digizua. We could talk about the trenches, we could talk about the D Wares and Micah Parsons. To me, I said linebacker play is going to be very important, because when you're seeing teams are focusing in on the Dallas Cowboys' weakness, which is running the ball, and it reared its ugly head in this game. Aaron Jones, who has killed the Cowboys time after time after time, did it once again. The Cowboys should have come into this game trying to solidify some type of linebackers, a play I'm going to say over this last month. Obviously, you can look in the trade deadline, or I'm just going to say the trade market early on before the trade deadline. You could look at anybody on the couch, but we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys. We had one of the most blaring weaknesses, and it was our linebacker room. And I'm going to say Damone Clark is not where he should be in terms of being able to be that guy in the middle of this defense. Obviously, not having a Leighton Vander Esch, and we saw how vital a guy like Leighton Vander Esch is to this team. I've said many times, he is that lunch pail worker. He's the guy that he's not always going to make the splash play, but sometimes you just need a guy that's going to make a play here and there when you need it, and just kind of help get other guys be in the position. And Leighton Vander Esch was doing it, and I feel like that's one of those things that's kind of, we're going to look back at this season as Dallas Cowboys fans and say that Leighton Vander Esch may be an underrated piece to this defense. Now, and let's be clear, I'm not saying bring Leighton Vander Esch back because you necessarily have to. We do know his health, and he could potentially be looking to not play anymore, but we'll see. But the Dallas Cowboys have got to go into this offseason, have got to go into this draft, and solidify the front seven. And that goes from linebacker to the interior to asking questions about some of these D-line pieces that may not be returning to the team. The Dallas Cowboys have got to have some turnover, because at this point, I'm not really sure that I care about who's going to be here, who's going to not be here. I'm ready for some change, and I'm not one of the people that's just always beating on my chest that you have to change everything every single year, every couple years. But now we're at the point there have got to be big questions and big moves, because at this point we can't keep doing any more talking. All the talking's done, from the players to the coaches to the owners. All the talk has meant nothing. It's continued to mean nothing, and this team has got to show something to the fan base that's fully supporting this team through the bad times and the good times. I also talked about, coming into this game, the biggest pieces, some of these things that are going to be very important to this game. Which Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn are we going to get? Are we going to get good Mike? Are we going to get bad Mike? Are we going to get good Dan? Are we going to get bad Dan? And I'm going to say, in this game, we got absolutely the worst Dan Quinn I think we've seen as Dallas Cowboys fans. This was a game that I'm going to say Dan Quinn showed exactly his biggest issues. And his biggest issues are what exactly? Dan Quinn does not at any point make adjustments when it's time to make major adjustments. We can talk about what you think this team should be doing. We can talk about how you would like to be playing, how you want to keep guys aggressive and kind of move guys around these chess pieces. But at some point, you have to realize, when an offensive coordinator has picked up on some of your tendencies, picked on some of your players' tendencies, and are going to use it against you. And that's exactly what happened in this game over and over and over. Matt LaFleur pretty much dominated Dan Quinn. It was embarrassing. And we're talking about just wide open guys over and over. Romeo Doubs, again, once I said, I believe he had ended up with 150 plus, I believe, receiving yards on 6 or 7 catches, something like that. So many wide open plays, it was making me sick to just watch. I know the rest of the fan base felt the exact same. Looking at, I believe, Luke Musgrave, wide open touchdown for the Green Bay Packers. We're talking about some of these plays looked as if you were on punt team, you were on special teams. It was so wide open, you're kind of confused at the point where you're asking, who exactly was busting on this play? But at some point, it looks like it's multiple guys on multiple plays. And I'm going to say what Dan Quinn was doing, though, absolute worst in this game, is not using our aggressive nature against the Green Bay Packers. At no point did you see Jordan Love get uncomfortable. At no point did you see even that offensive line for the Green Bay Packers be uncomfortable. At no point did you see any of these receivers be uncomfortable, because what was happening? Dan Quinn decided going into this game, playing zone majorly was going to be his I guess obviously his number one priority in this game. Zone, zone, zone. We saw so much zone, and not to the point that it was even zone defense. We were playing soft zone, and it was obvious that the Green Bay Packers had picked up on it, because they're finding hole after hole after hole, and there was nothing we're doing about it. But one of the biggest plays I remember early in the game, it's a 3rd and 4, I believe. You're looking at the alignment of the DBs as the corners, the outside corners, the boundary corners, and Dan Quinn has these guys playing about 8 yards off, and this is a drive that the Cowboys needed. The game is starting to slip away a little bit. I believe the Green Bay Packers had scored now 14 points, and we're going to have to need a major stop if we're going to try to slow down some of that and regain some of the momentum that we were having. And Dan Quinn just played scared this game. That's exactly, he coached scared, excuse me. He coached scared, he called his defense scared, and he called it conservatively at the worst time possible. I had big worries coming into this game about Dan Quinn, but I believe, because he has shown us enough his tenure here, that he can make some moves when it's time, but it's far and few in between the way I see it, because at some points, Dan Quinn is one of those guys, he's very proud, which that's a good thing sometimes as a coach, but can also be very detrimental to your team, because at some point you have got to call it and say, they figured out what we're doing, it's time to switch it up a little bit. I'm just very disappointed in this, I'm going to say this showing from Dan Quinn in what could potentially be his final game as a Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. And at this point, I'm not against making a move, because things have got to change. We're at the point now, again, Dan Quinn, obviously he's going to get talks. We do know Pete Carroll no longer being the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. Then you have teams like the Falcons, again, who he could potentially return to. I'm not sure exactly how that was going to go, but you have some names, and Dan Quinn's still in the mix. But I'm going to say right now, there's no way that the front office right now, the Dallas Cowboys front office, is not I guess you want to say it's fully on the table of just letting Dan Quinn go. And there's no way, to me personally, you can't say that other teams have potentially looked at what Dan Quinn and this defense have done and just the up and down, I guess, flow we've had. Yes, there have been some injuries, but it's just been too many things to that I personally believe could be changed and alleviated just by play calling and just by alignment that the Dallas Cowboys did not employ, Dan Quinn did not employ, and that was the major issue, because you're looking at a team that gave up at home, once again, at home, this is Cowboys Stadium, gave up 48 points. Nasty work. And we're talking about, obviously, 7 of those points came off of a Dak Prescott pick 6, but 41 points going to be total to the defense. It was not a great showing whatsoever. And I'm going to say, if this is Dan Quinn's last game as the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator, I appreciate what he's done while he was here, but I feel it may be time for a real change. Thing I spoke about, are we getting good Dan Quinn, bad Dan Quinn? Are you getting good Mike McCarthy, or are you getting bad Mike McCarthy? And once again, and I'm gonna say it clearly for this reason mainly, this is the worst Mike McCarthy we saw, and we've seen some ups and some downs. Of course, we could talk about the 3 back-to-back 12-5 regular seasons. That's great. At the end of the day, no one was brought here to win regular season games and win NFC East division titles, because yes, it sounds great and you have to start somewhere, but you cannot tell me that this is what the Cowboys should be doing at this point. We have one playoff win in the tenure of Mike McCarthy here, and that was against the lowly, I'm gonna say lowly, Tom Brady led Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tom Brady's final season. Tom Brady was on his way out, and we defeated a team that kind of gave some false hope. And I'm going to say, obviously, we can go back to some of these games and talk about some of these issues in these 49ers games. Yes, they were very close, and there were early opportunities in the last postseason game against the 49ers to pull out a win and to take control of that game. Of course, we know Tony Pollard getting hurt, whatever. At some point, we're not going to continue to make excuses. But Mike McCarthy, this was a terrible showing by Mike McCarthy as a play caller. And yeah, you could talk about 32 points, and obviously some of those are going to be considered garbage time. And I don't like to call stat padding or garbage time too early, because at some point, everyone will call it stat padding when the game is completely, when you look at the final score and the game's out of reach. But if the Cowboys had picked up some of this stuff earlier on, I don't like to call it stat padding, because it's necessary. You never know. If you score that last touchdown, the 2-point conversion, end up with the onside kick, you go score again, you never know. It's not really stat padding at that point now, is it? It was getting you back in the game. But what I'm going to put on Mike McCarthy is the conservative and just downright confusion he was bringing me as a fan watching this game early on. We're talking about a guy that has been aggressive over this last month or so, a month and a half, as the Dallas Cowboys obviously start to pick up some steam as a team. But what I saw from this game was completely Mike McCarthy going against the grain of what has been successful for this team. It's being aggressive on early downs. It's being aggressive on early drives. And we're seeing some opportunities. CeeDee Lamb did not have a great game by any estimation. I don't care about the getting over 100 yards, the 9 or 10 catches, something like that. This is not a great game by CeeDee Lamb by any stretch of the imagination, because he has a couple early drops. One I will say he should be catching. We're talking about being first team All-Pro with 135 catches, leading the league in touchdown. In receptions, being top 2 or 3 in receiving yards, being top 2 or 3 in touchdown catches. CeeDee Lamb, he has a couple early drops, and I felt like it kind of lost some of the steam that this offense has been picking up momentum lately. But Mike McCarthy, this was a game Mike McCarthy had the perfect opportunity to come in there and shut down the Green Bay Packers defense and let them know this is going to be a long game. What did he come out here and do? We're running the ball the same way I call it. We have not been a running team this entire year. I always say it's not about how often you run it. It's when you're running it and how smartly you're running the ball. It wasn't about coming into this game and deciding we're not going to hand it off to Tony Pollard, or we are going to hand it off to Tony Pollard. It's about being smart when you're using Tony Pollard in the run game. We came out here in the old reliable formula of just run, pass, and hoping that things are somewhat still in line on that third down and you're able to convert. The Dallas Cowboys were running into a brick wall because our offensive line has shown we're not the best run blockers as a unit this year. There's some things that can improve. I feel like we could get better at certain spots, obviously, but this team has shown you have got to focus on what you're good at. Don't talk about what you think you're good at or what you wish you were good at, because at the end of the day, this is the postseason. Playoff football in the NFL is about win or go home. No excuses around that. This was a game Mike McCarthy came out playing conservative to the point that the game started to slip and slip. And obviously then we see a play, which whether you're going to call it a ticky-tack missed call or whatever, Jair Alexander, to me personally, in my opinion, I don't even get into the refereeing and officials, bad calls, whatever. No bad, no calls, whichever way you want to look at it. Jair Alexander getting a hand on Brandon Cooks should have been at least a defensive holding, a pass interference. It was not called. That leads to a Dak Prescott interception. A great play on the ball, I will say, by Jair Alexander, albeit, again, the circumstances. And then the Green Bay Packers take the ball right there, and it goes back down, and they score quickly to make the game 14-0, another Aaron Jones touchdown run. This was a game where you're looking and saying, you have now got to open it up and let it fly. And what did Mike McCarthy continue to do? He tried to involve a run game that has not been our strong suit this entire season. In 17 games, Tony Pollard ends up with 1,005 yards. This is not a game where you're looking at Tony Pollard, a season, as if you're looking at Tony Pollard as being one of those breakout guys that he was last year, because you did not give him that running mate that he also had last year. We're talking about, obviously, who he became very accustomed to playing off of, Ezekiel Elliott, and that battering around style that Zeke runs with. You're looking at Tony Pollard being that change of pace guy, and that's where he would be able to catch teams off guard. What the Cowboys did not do was give him another guy, and not necessarily, if Tony Pollard's going to be getting your number one feature back carries, that's completely fine, but you're going to have a guy in there that can alleviate him. I felt like Rico Dowdle had the potential, and at certain points he did show some shine, but Rico Dowdle could not stay healthy. He could not stay in a rotation, so we could not build a formula that we can feel we can take into the postseason when it comes to the running game. So what we should have done is gone all out. I will say the Green Bay Packers won the toss, chose to receive, took it right down there on our defense. We talked about that Dan Quinn terrible defensive showing, and again, it's not all on Dan Quinn either. These players didn't show up as well, but we can talk about that. But the Green Bay Packers showing that they were going to be able to really just take the ball to us. You're going to now have to change your mindset, Mike McCarthy, and say you have to go into these drives just assuming this could be a shootout. Let's take advantage of what we know we can beat these teams at, what we're our best, I guess our strong suits are, and take advantage of them. You were not seeing Jake Ferguson be involved early. You weren't really seeing Brandon Cooks overly involved early. You weren't seeing CeeDee Lamb was getting a few targets again. Did not have a great game for himself, but I felt this offense was not aggressive, and it should have took off the training wheels way earlier. Mike McCarthy chose the worst time in the world to choose to not be an aggressive offensive play caller. That's what got Dak in the MVP running this year, is the fact just opening up the offense and letting things flow. We did not do that. We went completely against what we had been doing, and to me, these are things that are inexcusable. And I would say I can now look and see exactly how Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, and the committee up top look at this entire thing now and say, yeah, we appreciate what he's done, but this is not what he was brought here for. And losing the way that you did at home, the second seed, having home field advantage for the foreseeable future, you never know exactly how the 49ers path is going to go. But you have to take care of your own business, but you have the opportunity to play at home, which has been your best place. I guess you want to play your best playing that you've been doing this year is when you're at home at Cowboys Stadium, and coming out and losing to a 7th seed. That is inexcusable. And losing in the way that you lost to a 7th seed, completely inexcusable. So if Mike McCarthy is not back, I will not be surprised. I will not be surprised at all, because at the end of the day, regular season does not matter. Regular season is all about positioning. It's about getting you into the seeds and finding your space. But the Dallas Cowboys somehow found themselves in the perfect opportunity with the 2nd seed and still doing absolutely nothing with it. The thing I felt could be Mike McCarthy's saving grace is that he was going to be able to say that he was the play caller that got Dak Prescott MVP, made him an MVP candidate, and had such a successful year. But to me, now I feel like that will wear off some, because at the end of the day, now you have to also think about, as a front office, what exactly are you going to sell to your players that are going to be returning to this team, and the new players? Are you going to sell to them? We're going to have these great regular seasons. We're going to make these players. We're going to have these Pro Bowlers and these all-pro players. But when the postseason comes, our head coach, offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, whatever it is, we cannot get it done. At some point, you can't tell me these players don't stop believing in the messages. Again, let's be clear. The players have a lot of blame to take in this as well. So this is not just completely dumping on the coaches only. But right now, Now the focus is, I'm saying, as a fan base, the Cowboy Nation is looking at potentially what could be an entire change of the guard. We're talking about a new offensive coordinator, new head coach, potentially new defensive coordinator. Now you're looking around, filling the staff in around that. The Dallas Cowboys have a lot of things that they're going to have to question going forward, and it's going to start with Mike McCarthy, Dan Quinn. These are guys I'm potentially saying not going to be back and returning to this team going forward. Let's sit there and have the conversation. What's next? What's next? It's so much up in the air because you do know guys being dropped from their teams. Mike Vrabel. We know Bill Belichick no longer with the New England Patriots, the longtime coach, arguably the greatest. I'm gonna say the greatest coach of all time, obviously, and Bill Belichick. These are lots of guys, and I'm gonna say, right? You can look at Bobby Slowick, young offensive coordinated mind set around this league. You're going to see some of these guys potentially be in the loop if the Dallas Cowboys do choose to move on into a different direction on the coaching staff. But if we're going to solidify what this team needs to be going forward, there has to be a lot of change. We continue to talk about it, but I'm at the point now where I'm tired of the excuses. I'm tired of you're hearing a new player telling exactly they feel we can get it done. This is the team, we can finally do it. We have the pieces. And then at the end of the day, coming out and laying an egg. We have seen this so many times. It's past the point of excusing. I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't really care to hear it anymore. If we decide to make major changes, I'm fully with it. At this point, you have got to somehow ask yourself, the best thing for us as fans right now, as hard as it can be, is just to let this team go for a little while. Again, we have to talk about a month or so of time. I'm gonna be here. If any news is dropping, anything, updates, we're gonna talk about them as much as we can. But right now, I'm sure as a fan base, we're tired, we're exhausted, we want to vent. So I'm always gonna let this channel be that exact. If you guys want to go ahead and drop your comments in the message box, just whatever. Just let me know what you think about the Dallas Cowboys. How disappointed are you? Who are some of these guys that you felt could potentially have helped this team if not dealing with injury? A guy I'm a big fan of, also being a Texas Longhorns fan, DeMarvion Overshown, a guy I felt could really have helped this team. John Stevens Jr., a tight end that I believe could really have helped this team coming out of training camp, and unfortunately losing both of those guys during the preseason. These are going to be some questions that you're going to have to ask. Now you're going to look and ask yourself. Of course, the conversation has already turned around. Dak Prescott was supposed to be receiving an extension. Apparently he's been in talks with the front office, the Cowboys higher ups. They're having the conversations about an extension. I'm sure that may still potentially be get done, because at the end of the day, you do know a starting NFL quarterback is one of the hardest things to find. Everyone talks about getting better and improving and finding something better than what they do have. But right now, there's so much confusion. If you're out on Dak Prescott, I can't blame you. If you're in on Dak Prescott, I can't blame you. If you're in on Mike McCarthy, I can't blame you. More so, I'm going to say, just because, again, you still can't sneeze at 3 straight 12-5 seasons. But at the end of the day, I don't care about it personally. So that's why it takes me to, if you're completely out on Mike McCarthy, the Dan Quinns, I do not blame you at all, because you are very in your well in your rights to have that thought process at this point. The Dallas Cowboys have done nothing. Once again, we're talking about a postseason that ends to the 7th seed Green Bay Packers, 48-32. What is next? At this point, the NFL draft, I believe April 25th to 27th. This is going to be a time now for Cowboys fans. Some of your favorite college players, some of these guys start getting a look, keep an eye on, and some of these guys that you potentially could see joining the Dallas Cowboys in the draft, during the draft process. We'll see exactly how this goes. I appreciate you guys for all the support. We will get through this, because again, we always know the seasons they end, the season they come right back around, and we'll be right back here doing this once again. The Dallas Cowboys have let us down this year, but if you've been a fan long enough, this is nothing new. We just have got to figure out what's next for this team. Hopefully this coaching staff is going to be, and I'm going to say right now, hopefully this coaching staff does have some changes, because I feel like there are some things that we definitely need to, I guess, just iron out. And at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, is Mike McCarthy the guy that's going to continue to be the one to lead this culture? Is Dan Quinn going to be a guy, whether he takes a head coaching job, doesn't take a head coaching job, whatever it is Dan Quinn the guy to continue to lead this defense? Because at this point, I want to see a change of guard on the defensive side of the ball. because I personally think we have some players on this team that still have not reached their full ability and potential. And I'm going to call Micah Parsons on one of those especially. Micah Parsons has not reached his potential. Micah Parsons, of course, we talk about some of these guys. They're the big talkers. They're the conversationalists of the team. Micah Parsons is a talker. We know this. You love it, you hate it, whatever it is. But Micah Parsons did not have any splash plays, any special plays. And we do know teams sometimes will take, obviously, their game plan, their scheme sometimes in their formula to take away what Micah Parsons can do. This is going to be now where you're going to have to ask, is there somebody we can bring in here that can unlock the ability that some of these players have not shown? Are there going to be some guys that we're going to be able to get back next year in a Trayvon Diggs? And we'll see exactly what the secondary and this cornerback grouping looks like now knowing what a Deron Bland is. We'll see what some of these guys are going to be. But the Cowboys have got to change things up. The Cowboys have got to move some things around. And if we want to have a complete fire sale, I'm not against it at all, because I am ready for something new. I'm ready for something different, because I'm tired of doing this every single season, as I'm sure you guys are as well. I appreciate you guys once again for all the support. Go ahead and keep commenting, subscribing, liking, sharing. This is the place to be if you want to let your thoughts out. I want to know. And soon I'm going to just start dropping forums every Monday or Wednesday. I'm going to drop a forum just so you guys can go ahead and let me know exactly what you want to vent about. And later on in that week, usually maybe probably a Friday, I'm going to say, there'll be a Friday video where I get to you guys' comments and get to you guys' thoughts and you guys' messages and get my input on the topics as well. So I appreciate you guys for all the support again. Go ahead and keep liking, subscribing, and sharing. You guys are amazing. We will be back here when there's any Cowboys news that drops. But if you can, enjoy the rest of this NFL postseason, because the season is almost over. We do know the Dallas Cowboys did not get done what we hoped that they would and what they talked about getting done. But there will be another season. There will be another draft. There will be another mini camp, training camp, all that stuff, and we will be right here with you. Go ahead and appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys again, and go ahead and enjoy the rest of your day.